Welcome into the Bartholomew Town WPRO Forum Series. I'm Bill Bartholomew. Today, a forum in the Democrat primary for Attorney General. We've drawn the order for today's debate prior to starting here, so we'll get to that opening statement based on that order in just a moment here. But our candidates today, Keith Hoffman, he's a Rhode Island native, Newport born, actually, Fordham Law graduate, served as Norona's chief of policy. Kim Ahern, former Cannabis Control Commissioner. We have Jason Knight, state representative, and State Representative Joe Solomon. So we're going to start. The first thing people will hear will actually be your intro. So we begin with Keith.
Well, thank you so much, Bill, for having this forum today and for this opportunity to speak with your listeners. My name is Keith Hoffman, and I'm running for Attorney General because I have the experience and the energy to face many of the critical challenges Rhode Islanders are experiencing today. I was, as you just said, born and raised in Rhode Island. I went off for college and graduate school and returned home with my wife, Rachel, to raise our family. And I have always represented the people. I rose to become a senior leader in the Attorney General's office alongside Attorney General Peter Norona. And I have fought corporate greed that harms consumers, scams that harm our seniors. I fought for civil rights and equal rights and reproductive rights for all Rhode Islanders. I've fought gun violence in our communities and for access to affordable health care for Rhode Islanders. And when the Trump administration came in and they violated the law, I led our office's efforts to fight back against federal overreach alongside AG Norona. I'm running for Attorney General because I want to continue this critical work of keeping and making our communities safer, stronger, and fair for everyone in our state.
All right. Thank you, Keith. Kim Ahern.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for having us today. My name is Kim Ahern, and I'm also running for Attorney General. At its core, the Attorney General's job is simple: to protect Rhode Islanders, to protect our families from violent crime, to defend our rights, and to stand up for working people when powerful interests threaten our health, our safety, or our economic security. That mission has guided my entire career. I've served for nearly 2 decades as a prosecutor under the past 3 AGs, as a legal and policy advisor to 2 governors, and as the head of a state agency. I have personally prosecuted over 1,000 criminal cases, fought for survivors, advanced criminal justice reform, and helped tackle some of our state's greatest challenges like the COVID pandemic. But the reason I'm running, it's personal. My wife, Jenna, and I are raising 3 daughters, and like any parent or caregiver, I think about the world they're growing up in every day. When fundamental rights are threatened, it is incumbent upon the Attorney General to be the first line of defense, to stand up and fight back. I've done that before, and I'm ready to do that again. For me, this comes down to who has the experience and the proven record to lead on day one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim. Joe Solomon Jr.
Thank you so much for having us today. I'm Joe Solomon, and I'm running for Attorney General to protect Rhode Island families. And I've seen the justice system from every angle. For the past decade, I've been a bail commissioner. When someone gets arrested, I'm the one who shows up. 2 a.m, whenever. And I make the call. Is this person a danger or not? If they are, they stay locked up. I prosecuted hundreds of criminal cases in the Woke Solicitor's Office, and for over 11 years, I've been a legislator writing the laws. The law that stops scammers from draining a senior savings account. The law that cut catalytic converter thefts in most cities and towns. I'm not running to learn this job on your dime. I've been doing this my entire career. The Attorney General's office is a legal operation of over 250 public servants, and it needs a leader who's ready on day one. The people who do this work know me. The Fraternal Order of Police, the state troopers, the IBPO, the correctional officers, and over 16 of my colleagues in the General Assembly. They've seen me make the hard calls, and they trust me to keep making them, and that's what I'm asking to do.
All right. Thank you, Representative Jason Knight.
Well, thank you, Bill, and thank you, WPRO, for having me on today, along with all of us. My name is Jason Knight. I'm also running for Attorney General, and we live in dangerous and uncertain times. And I think what Rhode Island needs is a progressive champion with a knack for getting things done to protect Rhode Islanders and hold the line against the crazy policies of the Trump administration. I am a Navy veteran. I was 8 years active duty of the submarine service. I have 20 years in Rhode Island courts as both a prosecutor with the Attorney General's office and as a defender. And for the last 10 years, I've been a state lawmaker representing Barrington and Warren at the State House. And when Donald Trump and the MAGA movement sought to strip away the reproductive freedoms of women across this country, my colleagues and I in the House of Representatives worked hard to put Roe versus Wade into our state law and stand up for the bodily autonomy of women in Rhode Island. We face an epidemic of gun violence in this nation. And in Rhode Island, we have made significant inroads into gun safety, including passing the assault weapons ban, which I was a sponsor of, and just went into effect a few weeks ago. And of course, when ICE came to Warren to act on their racist agenda and put their Gestapo tactics into place, I spoke out. I took action. And along with my Democratic colleagues in the House of Representatives, we put some guardrails around ICE. I'm looking forward to our talk today, and I'm looking forward to the forum, and I thank you for having me on.
All right. Thank you very much, Rep. And we'll begin right now with the purview of the Attorney General. You're the state's top law enforcement officer. So with that in mind, prosecutorial discretion, priorities, so on and so forth. We'll stick with you, Representative Knight. How would you define a Knight Attorney Generalship?
That is a great question. I think that what you'll see under my administration is a real balance of, the needs of justice, right? There's a criminal division in the AG's office. Obviously, it's in charge of prosecuting all felony crimes here in the state of Rhode Island. There's a civil side. And the job of the AG is to really stand up for and protect Rhode Islanders. And when it comes to the criminal division side, you asked about discretion. I think what you're going to see is we're going to be thoughtful about we're going to prosecute every crime. When the police come to us with a case that has probable cause, we're absolutely going to charge it and we're going to go after it. When it comes to the sentencing phase or what to do with the offender, we're going to take an individualized approach and we're going to be thoughtful about what do we need to do to A, protect the public, B, deter this person from committing crimes again. And, for some people that might be jail, and it may be long jail. Let's face it, there are some serious crimes out there. But for others, first-time offenders, folks who we can, deter away from the criminal justice system, we're going to be thoughtful about what what kind of sentence we'll recommend in those cases. In other words, we're going to be about justice under my administration. That may include some jail, but it's always going to be justice first. And we're, really going to look out for our victims because they need our support as well.
All right. Thank you, Rep. Solomon. Same question. How would you define your Attorney Generalship?
I think Attorney General Peter Nerone has done a great job of running the office and expanding the duties of the office. First and foremost, though, we have to concentrate on the criminal law aspect of it and making sure that cases are going through the criminal justice system efficiently and victims are getting justice and also defendants are getting their day in court. Additionally, we need to look at the other duties of the Attorney General's office, which is healthcare. Any hospital merger and hospital sale goes through the Attorney General's office. Recently, we saw Roger Williams Hospital and Fatima Hospital in bankruptcy court, all the way in federal court in Texas. Fortunately, Attorney General Peter Nerone did a good job of ensuring that those two hospitals were bought by another group. But to do so, we had to pass at the General Assembly an $18 million backstop to ensure that happened. So the healthcare system is hanging on by a thread, and I believe the Attorney General's office is going to bring that stability that's necessary to that office. Additionally, there's been a ton of scams out there. Seniors are getting calls and text messages. We're all getting calls and text messages from scammers. As a legislator, I passed the laws, the digital forgery law, to go after those individuals who are sending those text messages. And I think we need to go more and prosecute those cases in the Attorney General's office.
All right. Thank you very much. Same question for you, Ms. Ahern.
Okay. Thank you. On my first day as a prosecutor under Attorney General Patrick Lynch, I was handed a document called the Rules of the Road. And those were the rules that should guide you as a prosecutor at the AG's office. I kept that on my desk every day for the entire time I served there. The very first rule is to do justice and to always be cognizant of the shortcomings of the criminal justice system. And I took that to heart. I've taken it to heart every step of my career. And so as Attorney General, my top priorities will be keeping Rhode Islanders safe from violent crime, to protect our fundamental rights and values in particular that are being attacked by this administration in Washington, D.C., and to support working people across our state that are struggling in so many ways right now, Bill. My background in the office is as a criminal prosecutor. Every day for just shy of a decade, I stood in courts throughout this state and brought justice for hundreds of survivors of intimate partner violence, child rape, human trafficking, sexual assault, and child molestation cases, and domestic violence cases is what I handled. And I was so proud to do justice for those survivors. But as the Attorney General, we need to keep all of the different units, and some of them have been mentioned by Jason and Joe here today, as top priorities, right? It's incumbent on the Attorney General to balance each of those units that exist in the office and make sure that we're keeping all Rhode Islanders at the forefront of keeping us safe for all of the issues that we brought up here today.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Hoffman, same question. What would an Attorney General's office look like under your leadership?
The Attorney General's office has very important functions in our state, both in criminal enforcement, civil enforcement, defense of the state, criminal investigation, hospital regulation, and all of those functions of the office have to be running very well in order for Rhode Islanders to be served and the public interest to be served. And so we'll start with the criminal division, which is a critically important part of the Attorney General's office, prosecuting between 4,000 and 6,000 felony cases a year, along with state police misdemeanors, bail violations. 25% of the felonies that are prosecuted by the office now go into diversion for first-time and youthful offenders. That is a good thing. We can expand on diversion programs. For example, I think we could create a felony veterans court, diversion court. And on the civil side, in enforcement, defense, this is where we find our work in healthcare and environmental protection and civil rights and consumer protection. Now, there's crossover into the criminal division in some of those cases, but often people are thinking about enforcement on the civil enforcement for those cases. And that is critically important work. It has always been critically important work. And that's what I've been working to build in what we call our Public Protection Bureau during the Noronha administration. But it is work that is especially important during the Trump administration, because what we see happening is that the Trump administration is doing less work in environmental protection, really no work in environmental protection, really no work in holding big, giant corporations accountable for consumer abuses, really no work in civil rights. In many areas, by the way, they're actually harming people's civil rights. They are harming our ability to hold corporations accountable for when they are engaged in misconduct. And this crosses to the criminal division as well. The FBI and the ATF and the DEA are doing more civil immigration enforcement rather than holding, firearm traffickers accountable, rather than holding human traffickers accountable. We need to look closely at what we can do to continue to keep Rhode Islanders safe and make progress in our state in an environment in which the federal government is really part of the problem in keeping our communities safe. And that is a critical role for the next Attorney General to step in and be prepared to keep our hospitals open, to protect our environment, to fight for survivors when our federal partners have really become often a part of the problem rather than part of the solution.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. So you've received Attorney General Noronha's endorsement. What's one thing you would change about the way that the Attorney General's office is run under the Noronha administration if you were elected?
Sure.
And this just 30 seconds here.
30 seconds. So because I was just talking about how the Trump administration has really altered the landscape for the states and for the state of Rhode Island. I think that there are a couple of areas that we need to really look at doing more work in. One is in worker protection. The OSHA, which protects people's occupational safety, workplace safety, prevailing wage theft. There used to be a Department of Labor and OSHA and an NLRB that protected workers' rights. We, I believe, at the state level can look closely at what more we can do there, as in other states like Massachusetts, Maryland, and New York that have been doing this work for some time.
So fair to say workers' rights and protections is something you would increase that's not happening right now under the Noronha administration.
And I think that is one area where we're doing some work now in wage theft, but expanding on that. even as we continue to look at areas in healthcare and consumer protection where the federal government really has fallen down in civil rights, and making sure that we're standing up for Rhode Islanders in all those
Thank you,
areas.
Mr. Solomon. What's one thing you would change under your administration that's happening now under the Nerona?
I think he's done a good job, but there's always ways that we can improve. And that improvement would be upon how quickly we can move the cases through the system. And to do so, I think we need to sit down with the judiciary. I think we need to sit down with defense counsel and our prosecutors in the Attorney General's office to see how we can all improve on moving those cases through the system. Because every day that goes by that a case hasn't been litigated or resolved is a day that a victim does not get justice and a defendant does not get their day in court.
So expedition of the system is something that you would summarize as a change from the Nerona.
As an improvement upon something that's already going well.
Representative Knight, what's one distinction between your office and the if you were sworn in and the Nerona administration?
I think that we need to refocus the energy of the office on the criminal division because the criminal division has been falling down on the job lately. They've lost cases in the Superior Court, major felony cases, and they've had a few cases flipped up at the Supreme Court just in the recent past. You know, we can never take our eye off the ball of the core mission of the AG's office, which is to keep the public safe. And there's a lot of things that the AG has to do. It's a really big job. I'm grateful for the work that Peter Nerona has done to sort of shore up and improve and make more visible the sort of public advocacy side of the office on some of these civil issues, particularly healthcare and energy use and environmental protection. And that's all great. But we need to walk and chew bubblegum at the same time and making sure that whatever task that the AG's office is engaged in, it's doing so with energy and competence, so it's producing real results in a timely manner for Rhode Islanders.
So refocus on the criminal division is something you would improve over the Nerona office. Okay, Ms. Ahern, one major change at all that you'd make from if you were sworn in from the Nerona administration?
Yeah, so first, I think Attorney General Nerona has done a wonderful job of advocating for Rhode Islanders, in particular, as we see increasing threats and attacks from this administration that we've been talking about here today. Two things that I would focus on right away. Day one, looking inward to the office, making sure that the employees there feel valued, feel that they can do their job, because nobody goes there to get rich. They go there because they feel a deep sense of duty and justice and purpose. And in particular, around the criminal division, where I spent a lot of my time at the office, I think that we need to make sure our resources are effectively utilized there. And so, for example, 1 out of every 4 women have been subject to domestic violence in our state. 1 out of every 3 say that they had some sort of unwanted sexual conduct, potentially under the realm of sexual assault. Those are horrific statistics, something that we all talked about last week at a separate forum. When I left that unit doing those types of cases, my average caseload was around 150, which is too many, by the way. Now that amount has gone up between 200 and 220 or so. And so we need to make sure that unit is effectively staffed, because we need to make sure we're keeping the top priority of keeping Rhode Islanders safe at the forefront. And the other thing I would add, Bill, is that on day one, I would work to create a unit dedicated to fighting for reproductive justice and bodily autonomy, because women across this country objectively have less rights than me and my wife, Jenna, had growing up. And we need to do everything we can to protect and fight back against this administration.
All right, thank you. So in some, expanding specific units and making sure it's properly funded. That's something that we've seen play out in dispute between the current Attorney General Nerona and the current Governor McKee. In quick response here, if we could just go around the table, starting with you, Mr. Hoffman, would you advocate the General Assembly and the Governor with regularity for funding to get the staffing or other equipment that you need? Is that something you would invest time and energy into as a sort of a yes or no thing? Is that a priority for you?
Yes.
Yeah. Ms. Ahern?
Absolutely.
Mr. Solomon?
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Knight?
Of course.
Okay, so let's move from there. Just one point of differentiation here that I do think ties into criminal justice is, Mr. Solomon, you and Mr. Knight have different voting records on guns, and I think it's an important distinction for people who are making a decision in a Democrat primary. Mr. Solomon, you voted against some of the most recent, as a member of the General Assembly, you voted against recent gun legislation, saying it went too far. Mr. Knight, you introduced some of that legislation. What's the key differential here, Mr. Solomon, for you? Where do you stand on guns? And when you say that legislation 2 years ago went too far, what did you mean by that?
So if you're speaking about the assault weapons bill,
Yes.
I voted against that bill because I felt like it went too far, that it went beyond what other states have done, in addition to the fact that it was more restrictive than the federal government ban back in 1994. However, I have voted for the red flag bill, which takes guns out of the hands of those who are having a mental health crisis. And in addition, I voted for the bill that would take guns out of the hands of domestic abusers, because I believe that we need to go after the guns in the people that are committing these awful offenses first.
Mr. Knight, your position has been pretty well documented as, we'll just say, anti-gun. I think that is a fair way to say, but to a certain extent anyway, that has been a flag that you have at least been identified as. Is that a fair assessment?
No, not at all. Listen, I come from a family that's steeped in public service. My grandfather was a combat veteran in World War II and Korea. My father was a Navy veteran and a police officer. I learned to use firearms at a really young age. I think I was probably 5 or 6 years old when I first went out onto the range with my dad. And of course, I was in the service and I qualified with firearms. And I recognize that the Second Amendment exists and it provides the right to bear arms in this country. But we don't have to be cavalier about it. We don't have to be dumb. We have an epidemic of gun violence in this country. We know that the data shows states that have strong gun safety legal frameworks have a lower rate of gun violence in their community. And while I've been at the General Assembly, in addition to the law banning domestic abusers from having firearms, in my first year, which I'm proud to have supported, we've done the red flag law, we banned ghost guns, we banned bump stocks, we banned high capacity magazines, and of course, assault weapons. We improved background checks. I introduced and passed a bill at the request of AG Nerona to ban straw purchases of firearms. We need to make sure that every public official, when they have the ability to take some action in this world, they need to take that action. I'm proud of my record up at the General Assembly as being a gun safety advocate, and I will work hard as your Attorney General to make sure that the public is protected from gun violence.
Ms. Ahern and Mr. Hoffman, I want to ask you each to respond to that through a pair of lenses: one, personal political persuasion, if you will, and secondly, through constitutionality and constitutional viability in terms of laws. Ms. Ahern, do Rhode Island's gun laws go far enough right now? Our election season content is supported by RIPHI, the Rhode Island Public Health Institute. RIPHI is an independent nonprofit organization dedicated to addressing complex health disparities in Rhode Island and beyond. RIPHI oversees a diverse range of public health programs addressing issues from healthy food access to infectious disease prevention. They also conduct research related to population health and train students and public health practitioners for fulfilling careers in Rhode Island's workforce. RIPHI owns and operates Open Door Health, the state's first and only LGBTQ+ focused community-based clinic. Open Door Health provides primary care, sexual health care, and fully integrated behavioral health care to nearly 6,000 patients across the state. Learn more at riphi.org. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. Bartholomew Town is proud to partner with Waterfire. Visit waterfire.org. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communications, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience message and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. And by the way, join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. Bartholomew Town is proud to partner with Newport Film. Visit newportfilm.com. Follow me on Instagram at Bill Bartholomew.
Well, first of all, sitting with two legislators, and I am not a legislator, of course, we've gone over that, but I commend the General Assembly for taking action after years of debate. And I was there for some of that as a legal counsel to the last two governors and saw the advocacy in the building and the work that went into passing that bill and the strong forces that exist on the other side. And so as the Attorney General, my top focus will be on a few things. And I've actually prosecuted gun cases for the state of Rhode Island. I've actually trained in firearms as well as prosecuting those cases, which is one thing that Attorney General Peter Martin wanted all prosecutors to do. And so my top priority is keeping guns out of the hands of violent criminals, making sure that individuals that are committing crimes have no access point to weapons of war that should have no place on the streets of Providence or anywhere else, and making sure that on our first day in office, we're looking at the red flag law and making sure that we're finding ways and meeting with local law enforcement to make sure that's as effective as we need it to be for those with documented mental health issues.
Quickly, if I could ask you just to define weapon of war.
Well, we're talking about assault weapons. Yeah.
Mr. Hoffman, do Rhode Island's gun laws go far enough right now?
So it really depends on the law that you're talking about. I mean, I think that the gun safety laws that the General Assembly has passed, many of which were stamped by the Attorney General and that some of which I helped to draft and pass, are good laws. I think that they're constitutional. I think that we need to defend them. I think that we need to prosecute those who violate them. I think that there are absolutely additional gun safety laws that the state could pass, and implementation measures that we could take to make the existing laws more effective. I think that the red flag law both could be amended to add the Attorney General as a petitioner, allow us essentially to have a seat at the table in flagging an individual who's a threat to themselves or others. You know, you asked about personal persuasion. My personal story is that my dad was a veteran. He was an NRA member. I grew up shooting 22s mostly. And I also, in the AG's office, when I was defending the large capacity magazine ban from a constitutional attack, went to the range and shot some of these weapons of war, these assault weapons, just to see what it was. What this was about, because as a kid, I'd fired 22s and some handguns, but never anything like this. And I have to tell you, it's terrifying that up until recently, these firearms could be purchased in this state. The lethality of these weapons, there's a reason why they are the preferred weapons of school shooters and individuals who want to inflict maximum damage. And the ease of shooting those firearms is so much different for those who just aren't aware. You know, a 22, it's not so easy to hit the target. You have to train and understand it. With these modern weapons of war that until recently were allowed on our streets, you with a laser sight, laser scope, very little kick, can inflict an enormous amount of damage, and I believe have no place in our communities, and that the Constitution does not protect individuals' ability to possess those firearms.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Hoffman. I just want to go around one more time. There was legislation introduced this year in Rhode Island that would have essentially outlawed the possession of those assault style weapons that were banned here in Rhode Island last year. This is just from a constitutional purview standpoint. Representative Knight, do you think that piece of legislation where folks would have to turn in weapons that are now grandfathered into legality, is that an approach that is both constitutional or appropriate for this state to take? And if you were Attorney General, would you support that kind of legislation?
You know, that bill that was put in this year, I understand the impetus of the sponsors. I was not one of them, because it's a blanket ban on possession, which no other state has enacted, because the lawyers and staff in those other states, and of course our lawyers and our staff and myself, when we were doing the original assault weapons ban, thought would run into constitutional problems. That's why the original bill that I introduced in the House of Representatives back in 2025 included a grandfather clause that said if you own one today prior to the date of the ban, then you can keep it and it stays legal. And that we had some ups and downs with that bill, and eventually the Senate and the House compromised on a ban on sales and transfer. So I like my original bill, which had the grandfather clause, but what came down the road this year I don't think it was supported by the law, so I didn't support it.
Representative Solomon, when you see legislation like that and you consider it from the standpoint of possibly being attorney general, could you support legislation that would take grandfathered legal weapons out of people's homes or force a turn-in?
No, because it's unconstitutional. And one thing I also want to point out is that the U.S. Supreme Court is actually going to take up this issue. I believe they're hearing arguments in October on from a couple of states, one of them being our neighbor in Connecticut.
Mr. Ahern?
And that's what I was going to say too, that the U.S. Supreme Court just, I think last Friday, decided to take cert on this case. And the next attorney general will need to take a very close watch at that and see exactly what Joe just said, what's being litigated up there, how that compares to what you're talking about, and look closely at the legislation in the next session.
All right, Mr. Hoffman.
The question is whether the assault weapon bill this year that was
Yes,
introduced is
that would
constitutional.
have required people to either turn in or possibly for the state to enter into a home to repossess, if you will, weapons that had previously been grandfathered in as legal.
All right, so I'd have to see the text of the bill and really analyze it to understand if it's constitutional or not. I think that the version of the bill that was introduced that the Attorney General stamped, the assault weapon ban in 2025, contained a provision that said that if you possess one of these firearms, it could remain in your possession with some sort of evidence that you had indeed purchased it before the date of the ban. And that's really important because while, for example, the federal assault weapon ban back in the 90s didn't require people to be dispossessed of a firearm, there were checks in place to make sure that somebody didn't buy one of these firearms from out of state or at the federal level out of the country and bring it in. That's very important in gun safety. I think that whenever you're prohibiting a firearm, even if you include a grandfather, ideally you will include a mechanism to make sure that people don't skirt the law. In this case, buying a firearm in New Hampshire, bringing it across the border, which would be a violation of federal law. But there is much less federal enforcement in this area, as we've been talking about, than there was before. And, on the constitutionality side of things, the United States Supreme Court is in a whole lot of different areas changing the rules. And I profoundly disagree with many of these United States Supreme Court decisions. We are bound by them, of course. But until they act, I believe that in any area, state legislators should feel that they can do what they need to do to keep Rhode Islanders safe. And we shouldn't be necessarily waiting for an opinion that may or may not do what people think it will do. There was a decision after Bruin. I'll wrap up in just a second, but there was a decision after Bruin.
That's not the wrap-up alarm, by the way. That's not
alarm.
it's secret weapon.
But I'll try for you to wrap up anyway.
Yeah.
There's a U.S. Supreme Court decision called Bruin, which changed the rules on what is constitutional or not under the Second Amendment. And there was a case after that called Rahimi, which people thought would change the rules again, that the Supreme Court would go farther and restrict our ability to regulate firearms more fully. In fact, they didn't do that at all. They increased the ability of states to regulate firearms. And so reading the tea leaves in this Supreme Court is often not a great exercise. I think that, what I will do as Attorney General when the legislature comes to me with a bill is honestly ask my attorneys who specialize in this, ask them to honestly analyze the law. And unless there is a Supreme Court precedent that says that the legislature cannot act, allow them to do what they think is right to regulate public safety.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Let's turn to something that has become a staple of many attorneys general across the country, which is serving as a bulwark against the Trump administration. Peter Nerona included has been in league, our own Attorney General Nerona has been in league with many attorneys general across the country on a variety of issues. Again, this is a time management and a priorities issue, if you will. Representative Solomon, will you continue Peter Nerona's stance and frequency in standing with other attorneys general in taking literally the fight against Trump, if you will, to the courtroom on a regular basis?
So we need to maintain the lawsuits that Peter Nerona has already filed against the administration. And I believe we need to file more where it's necessary, where we need to protect Rhode Islanders against federal government overreach. So yes, I would continue it. And regardless of who's in the White House, we need to protect Rhode Island interests first.
Representative Knight, you called the president essentially lawless. Does that mean you would increase the
Can
pressure?
I throw in corrupt and chaotic?
The floor is yours. But does that mean, is it fair to say that that leads you possibly to more engagement in coalitions in with other attorneys general or on your own initiating other suits against the administration? Is that something you would champion? Would be a hallmark of your office, so to speak?
You know, the thing to remember about the Attorney General's office is that the first word of the title is attorney, subject to the rules of all the ethical rules, which means we have clients. The Attorney General of the state of Rhode Island has a client. It's the state of Rhode Island. It's the people of Rhode Island. So you got to make sure that when you're acting for their benefit, for their protection, right? So you can't just willy-nilly say, I'm, going to raise the flag and take the charge, against every red herring that comes down the road from the federal government. But when President Trump's terrible policies affect Rhode Islanders in some significant way, we are absolutely going to be there to push back and fight back against them, right? This is really serious. And oftentimes this conversation, I think, gets, transformed into somehow it's like this army of attorney generals just pushing back willy-nilly against President Trump. And that's not what's happening. What we're trying to do, what the attorney generals are doing, and I'll do as Rhode Island's attorney general, is be thoughtful about taking up the cases so that we are constantly pushing back on the truly unlawful, the truly unconstitutional, the truly terrible policies of the Trump administration in a really thoughtful manner. There's nothing from the hip about this. And I don't think it's been true with Peter Nerona's office, and it won't be true under my office.
All right. Thank you very much. Ms. Ahern, your stance as Attorney General in terms of standing up to policies of the Trump administration, the pragmatic aspect of it, your personal view, is that the responsibility of the Attorney General to get involved the way that Attorney General Nerona has?
Absolutely. And for me, Bill, let me just say it's personal. My wife, Jen, and our marriage in real time is under attack by this administration. They went after marriage equality last fall, trying to take a case all the way to the Supreme Court that we were just talking about. It wasn't successful, but they'll be back. My 3 daughters are growing up with less rights and freedoms to their own bodily autonomy than I had as a young woman in this country. So when I say it's personal and I'll fight back, I mean it. And I commend Attorney General Nerona for the work he is doing in this area to protect all of Rhode Island when this administration attacks not just our fundamental rights and values, but our nonprofits, right? Our budget, or just our bottom line. There's several instances where he stood up and fought back and brought real money back to the state. But I want to be clear about something. This is a decades-old tradition of the Attorney General's office dating back to the Reagan administration, which is when Democratic AGs started to get together and sue collectively in lawsuits against Republican administrations. I saw that firsthand working for Attorney General Patrick Lynch, who sued the Bush administration. Saw that under Attorney General Peter Martin, who, by the way, sued the Trump administration for a few years. And I also saw it firsthand when I was legal counsel to Governor Gina Raimondo. And I was responsible in helping to lead the state's response to the COVID-19 pandemic at a time when this same president in Washington, D.C. was in Washington, D.C., Trump won, and causing chaos and havoc across the state. And we showed that a state that we can and will stand up to these antics. And so, yes, I will 100% continue that work. And by the way, we have to remember, too, that this next Attorney General, hopefully, right, Donald Trump will be gone in 2 years. And then the work continues. And the work continues, and the next Attorney General still needs to go after anyone that is trying to harm the residents of Rhode Island. And that's what I intend to do.
Mr. Hoffman, on that same question, in terms of the existing Attorney General's approach, Peter Nerona's approach, would you continue that? Would you increase or decrease the engagement that Rhode Island has had on these in-league lawsuits, so to speak?
Well, I would certainly continue the approach that we've taken and that I led under Attorney General Nerona. Now, what is the Attorney General's office fundamentally? One way of thinking about it is that we're an accountability office. When a bad guy breaks the rules, whether it's a slumlord or a criminal or the President of the United States, we will hold them accountable. And what is different about this particular fight against the unlawful conduct of the second Trump administration is the scale of it. I was a part of the fight against federal overreach during the first Trump administration, during the 2020 election. It is an unprecedented level of overreach by the second Trump administration. Peter Nerone and I first talked about this in 2024 when we saw Project 2025 and some tweets that future administration officials were putting out. And I was put in charge of what we called the Project for Federal Accountability to ensure that Rhode Island would be prepared to defend the fundamental rights of Rhode Islanders and also our budget and other entities within our state if there was a second Trump administration. After the election, Peter and I went to Philadelphia, and I presented along with an attorney from New York about work that we senior staff around the country in AG's offices had done to prepare, drafting ultimately about 51 lawsuits that we needed to be ready to file if the administration did what they claimed that they were going to do. And ultimately, the level of misconduct from this administration has been even greater than that predicted by Project 2025. And the budget impact for our state is well over $1 billion. The fundamental rights of people across our state are at risk if we don't effectively lead this work. And the critical
10 seconds, Mr. Hoffman.
The critical thing is to understand that it really can't be an either or. We absolutely have to prosecute criminals. We absolutely have to, go after toxic polluters and others who break the law, and to include the president of the United States and his administration.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Sometimes these issues trickle down as well to the local level. We've seen this play out in issues like battles at school committees over inclusion in sports or special situations where students who are transgender are bullied or not accommodated appropriately, we'll say. We've seen this trickle down where even some organizations are going from school committee to try to strip rights away from LGBTQAI plus folks. Would you, as Attorney General, stand up to any organization or any individual that tries to inhibit full inclusion and equity of any student in this state, including a person who's transgender, whether it's bathroom or sports participation, starting with Representative Knight?
I got to tell you, I think one of the most despicable things that the Trump administration is doing in this second term is trying to essentially disappear from public life and society an entire group of people simply for being who they are and as God made them, and that is trans folks. I mean, it is terrible. I just can't think of enough bad words around it. So my administration, when I'm the Attorney General, will do absolutely everything we can to protect the rights of all Rhode Islanders from whatever attack vector it comes. If it happens to be because someone's trans or LGBTQIA or anything else, we'll be right there to stand up for them.
Would you stand up for a student who wants to participate in sports based on their gender identity if a school committee or any other outside organization tried to thwart that?
Yes.
Representative Solomon, same question on, would you insert the Attorney General's office into matters protecting individual students based on their sexual orientation or identity?
Yes. Yeah. And I think we all kind of lose sight. I don't lose sight of it, but I think others lose sight of it. We're dealing with kids here, young kids. And, it's unfortunate that on the federal level, they're using these kids as political pawns. And we need to make sure that they're protected, that they feel safe, and they're not being used and they're not being put out onto the national stage. So I think that's something that we all have to look at and be more protective of these individuals.
Would you use the Office of the Attorney General to protect student athletes who wanted to participate in a sport that was aligned with their gender identity, but not their sexual orientation at birth?
They have a right to participate in sports,
including the gender identification that they choose. Ms. Ahern, same question on protections for students and really anyone, but in this context, the fight that seems to be playing out at school committees, specifically with transgender students.
Yeah. When I think about this question, I think about so many people and individuals that in particular in our trans community that just feel completely under attack at every step of the way by this administration. They're really going after our most vulnerable communities, and it is awful. And I can't imagine actually what some folks in my community, in my LGBTQ plus community, are going through. And when I think about this, my mind goes to as a parent that has kids that proudly participate in youth sports. And when I think about them and when I think about the things that I worry about as a parent, it's like, how's their coach going to handle the game that day? Or are they going to get hurt? Or if they get better and more successful, like some of these awful cases involving child sex abuse of coaches, right? I don't ever think about a kid that is a trans kid just wanting to participate and learn the values of sportsmanship and learn the values that I learned as a young athlete in this country. And so, yes, I would 100% stand up for my community when they feel under attack.
Including transgender participation in sports that athlete identifies. Understood. Mr. Hoffman, same question on that space in some. I won't reset it.
Yeah, so the answer is absolutely. And when a student is discriminated against or an athlete is discriminated against on the basis of their status as a person who identifies as transgender or due to race or religion or ethnicity or immigration status or any what we call protected characteristics, absolutely, it's critical. And what this administration has done is tried to bully children. And the impact, what's the real impact of that? Well, there's the impact on the child and when the policies harm them. But the broader impact is that a whole group of people, in this case, trans individuals that you asked about, are increasingly subject to violent attack in this country. And we absolutely, as Democrats and as public officials and as an attorney general, need to show our state and the people of our state what it means to defend people's right to be themselves. And I'm very proud of the work that I've done in this space. I was the civil rights chief in the office. I led the first civil rights investigation of a school district for alleged racist bullying. We successfully enforced civil rights laws there. I helped to draft and then advocated for the successful passage of the Healthcare Provider Shield Act. And many other instances, and against Trump's overreach. I mean, look, this community, the LGBTQ community and reproductive rights are absolutely at the center of the Trump administration's plans to divide and bully and take away the rights of Americans. I've fought back against it. I'll continue to fight back against it as Attorney General.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Hoffman. In preparation for this debate, I spoke with Dr. Amy Nunn and Dr. Philip Chan at the Rhode Island Public Health Institute. That's a nonprofit. And look, obviously, we've discussed it in some public health and the healthcare system. With the amount of time we have left, we don't have time to go too deep on this. But if I could ask each of you to identify one healthcare system priority on day one to strengthen Rhode Island's healthcare system from the perspective of the Attorney General's office, beginning with Ms. Ahern.
Our healthcare system is in crisis, right? I'm sure when you talk to Dr. Nunn and Dr. Chan that they echoed that. And first and foremost, as a proud Democrat, I believe that universal healthcare is a fundamental right. Affordable, quality healthcare should be a fundamental right. And this administration is doing everything it can to roll those back, in particular by passing tax breaks that have increased premiums across Rhode Islanders, right? Health insurance is going up. People are losing coverage. We don't have access to primary care doctors. I personally don't have a primary care doctor right now. And so there's so many things that we could respond to this question. But as the Attorney General, we need to have a holistic look at the entire system. And the Attorney General's office needs to stand up for the rights of Rhode Islanders across the board, because healthcare is so much more than just one individual patient with a doctor, right? It's access to housing. It's making sure you can stay safe in your housing and not get kicked out by a landlord or by increasing utility bills. It's reproductive justice and bodily freedom. And that's why I said at the outset that that's the type of unit I want to create at the Attorney General's office. So for this question, it is entirely difficult to focus on just one thing when the healthcare system is in crisis as a whole, and so many aspects of that are part of our healthcare crisis. And so for me, as the Attorney General, I'm going to stand up for patients and residents and nurses and doctors that are having a tremendously difficult time going in and out of these facilities, in our hospitals, in our practices. And we already talked about it earlier, but the Attorney General has a really important regulatory hat in this space, right? To either approve or not hospital mergers. And in those instances, I'm going to stand up and fight for Rhode Islanders to have access to quality, affordable healthcare.
All right, Mr. Hoffman, day one action you would take to strengthen the healthcare system. I know this is a crazy question for
So day one, it's sitting down with your healthcare team and understanding the scope of, the privileged information that the office has pertaining to healthcare, including in any proposed mergers or any other conversations that might be happening right now that we might not know about. But I can tell you that the funding of our healthcare system in this state is critically low and very important to solving this problem. And one action that I think that we should take is to closely consider suing the federal government, Medicare. It would actually be a lawsuit against CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, over the state's unreasonably low Medicare reimbursement rate, which is a federal program, a federally funded program. Senator Whitehouse for many years has advocated for increasing Medicare reimbursement for the state of Rhode Island, and the Congress has not budged. But we are, in my view, and in the view of experts that I've spoken with, really at an extraordinary disadvantage as compared to Connecticut and Massachusetts in Medicare reimbursement. Part of this is about how large health systems have been set up over there, that they draw providers out of Rhode Island. This is one of the things that's leading to our primary care crisis in this state. Part of it is about something called the Bay State boondoggle, which is when the late great Senator Ted Kennedy, before his death, negotiated a higher Medicare reimbursement for the state of Massachusetts and nobody else. The upshot of it is that our system, both in Medicaid and in Medicare, does not have enough revenue. And this is one of the things that's putting pressure not only on primary care practices to close, but on health systems to consolidate in a way that does not serve patients. Be at the absolute North Star of our healthcare policymaking to make sure that they have access to the healthcare that they need to live and thrive.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Solomon, day one, the system as a whole.
It's a great question. I don't think we can wait for day one. I think we already need to do it now. I can tell you in the General Assembly, we've been working on this issue for years. We've increased the reimbursement rates for physicians. I've sponsored a legislation. And I guess one of the biggest things for the healthcare is primary care physicians. So I introduced a bill that allowed foreign trained physicians to practice in the state of Rhode Island, assuming that they hit certain requirements. My doctor about a couple months ago sent me a letter saying that he's moving to a concierge practice, and to remain in the practice, it's going to take $2,500 per year. I think about if a doctor serves 1,300 people and goes down to 300 patients, what happens to those 1,000 patients who couldn't go to that particular doctor? Where do they go? And considering we have a primary care physician shortage in the state of Rhode Island, that's a huge problem. And I know we're currently looking at the University of Rhode Island building a medical school. And we need to do more. We need to convene now. We can't wait for day one in January. It needs to happen now.
All right, Representative Solomon, thank you. Representative Knight, day one as Attorney General, healthcare system improvement.
Well, patients and providers are going to be the North Star for my administration when it comes to the healthcare practice of the Attorney General, engaged in the regulatory space and in both advising the governor and the General Assembly, because we need a healthcare system. We have people in Rhode Island who obviously we all need healthcare at times, and we can't do anything without the providers. So making sure that we have the providers and the financial networks that they need, the resources they need to actually do their jobs here is key, and is going to be key throughout my entire administration. Day one, literally the first minute, we got to check in with Roger Williams and Fatima, right? We just completed the sale to Centurion with an $18 million backstop from the General Assembly, which Joe and I voted on February. And there's some real concern whether or not Centurion can pull that off with those two hospitals. So we have to be, this is nuts and bolts. The AG was on top of that issue, managing, being an involved participant in the bankruptcy and in the sale from Prospect to Centurion. We've got to check in with those hospitals, see how they're doing, make sure that almost a year in, by the time January rolls around, that they are functioning well, and there's no red flags. That's literally day one, first minute. after that, there'll be some other things to do.
All right. Thank you very much, Representative Knight. Believe it or not, we're actually approaching closing remarks here in just a few seconds. But before we do so, I just wonder if we just go around the table as quickly as possible, what's your favorite thing about Rhode Island? I mean, this is like, okay, here we go. What's next? Who was your favorite teacher in elementary school? It seems, but I think it informs policy as well. Let's just stay in the order we were in, Representative Knight.
Man, I love the water and the beaches. Anything I can do to get out on the water, get on a boat, get on a surfboard, get out on the beach. I mean, we're right in the middle of the golden 8 weeks, like July and August. Yeah. It kills me that we're running a campaign during the season because I would love to be out on the beach. But that's what I really love about Rhode Island is the beach.
All right, thank you, Representative
Still my
Solomon.
answer. I was going to say the 400 miles of coastline of the state of Rhode Island, and it's 39 miles of coastline in the city of Warwick. Just like Jason, I haven't had an opportunity to be out on the water on my jet ski, but looking forward to it next year.
Yeah, the room we're in right now kind of feels like the beach a little bit, I suppose, somewhat of an interrogation room on the beach. Mr. Ahern, your favorite thing about the state?
I moved here as an 18-year-old to go to college, and I've been here ever since. I fell in love with the state. I fell in love with my wife, and we've been here ever since. And the thing I love the most is the community. I love being a parent in the city of Providence. I think there's so many amazing, diverse opportunities that my kids are having. Just even like at the pedestrian bridge on a Thursday night, like spend a Thursday night at the pedestrian bridge in Providence. And you'll see all walks of life and amazing artists and community. And I really do love that about our state.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hoffman.
I love the sense of family and community in this state. I grew up here, and when I was 13, my dad passed away from cancer linked to Agent Orange exposure in the Vietnam War. And a group of families in our community really came together to help support our family at that time. And I was very lucky. And there are people all around this state who are struggling a great deal more, especially in the crisis that we're facing with this federal administration right now. But Rhode Islanders are an amazing people, and everybody is connected, of course, 1 or 2 degrees of separation. And it just makes this state into such an extraordinary place, an extraordinary community that I believe if we all come together and we fight for a better state for all of us, we can succeed in facing many of the challenges that are ahead.
Yeah, we all know the experience of bumping into Sheldon Whitehouse or Nellie Gorbea at the grocery store and what that looks like. So thank you all for being here today and making time for this. This is definitely nice to see a thorough discussion here from our standpoint. So thank you for not turning this into a nonsensical waste of time. I think we gleaned policy perspective and differentiation here today. So with that being said, we'll go in the same order we did opening remarks for closing statements. Please keep them to 60 seconds or less. We begin with Mr. Hoffman.
Well, thank you so much, Bill, for hosting this forum today. And I agree, it was substantive, and it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with you and your listeners. Today, we've discussed such important issues. We've talked about both the criminal division's functions within the AG's office and the importance of ensuring that healthcare system remains accessible to Rhode Islanders and affordable. The work that we do holding corporate bad actors accountable. We've talked about civil rights and reproductive rights and rights for our, trans members of our community. We have talked about the importance of firearm safety in the state, a critical piece of the Attorney General's portfolio and workload. This is the work of the next Attorney General to ensure that this critical part of our state and our state government remains effective at carrying out its critical mission. And as Attorney General, I believe that I have the energy and the experience as a former senior leader of the office, alongside Attorney General Nerona, to continue to fight every day to make our state safer, stronger, and fairer for all of us.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Ahern.
Thank you, Bill, for having us. And thank you to the men who joined us in this conversation. It was a wonderful opportunity to talk. For the past hour or so, we'll be talking about the future. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about what brought me here. I come from a family that deeply believed in service. Both my grandfather served in World War II. My late mom dedicated her career to the United States State Department. And my late father served 2 tours in Vietnam and came back determined to make our country a better place. And so those values guided me. They taught me that work is not titles or recognition. It's about showing up and doing the work and standing up for what's right. And they guided me to the Attorney General's office as a prosecutor fighting for justice and for survivors. They guided me through state government, through some of Rhode Island's biggest challenges. But most importantly, they guide me as a wife and as a parent. My wife, Jen, and I, like I said at the outset, we're raising 3 kids. And like any parent, I think about the world they're being exposed to. And I want them to grow up in a place where they are safe, where there are opportunities, and where their rights are protected. And to me, that's what the Attorney General's office is all about. And so I hope to earn your vote on September 9th. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ahern. Representative Solomon.
Thank you so much. So you've heard from all 4 of us today. And here's the difference. I'm the only candidate up here who's seen this system from every angle. As a prosecutor, bail commissioner, and a legislator, I made the calls and I've had to live with them. I won't need to learn this job while Rhode Islanders wait. Here's what I'll do with it. I'll put violent and repeat offenders first. Go after the guns driving the violence, the stolen guns and the ghost guns, and stop bleeding those cases down. And I'll build a unit that does nothing but protect seniors from fraud. For 6 years, I've chaired the committee that oversees banks and insurance companies. Independent researchers rank me among the most effective legislators in the state. I don't say that to brag. I say it because the Attorney General's office is 250 public servants, and they need a leader who gets results, not another voice in the room. I'm not running for this job. I'm not running for this office to run for the next one. I want this job, not the next one, this one. And I've made the tough calls for over 10 years. And I'd be honored to keep making them as your next Attorney General. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And Representative Knight.
Well, thank you, Bill, for having us, and WPRO for hosting this debate. I wish we could do these forums all the time, because I think the voters really get a sense of who we are and what the differences are, just as you said. Listen, we live in a moment of peril in the United States and in Rhode Island. In Rhode Island, we've had 2 mass shootings in the last few months. At Brown, the shooting, at Pawtucket shooting is terrible. We have a president who tears at our rights every day, who's just intent on ripping up the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And there are just so many outrages. I mean, he pardoned the insurrectionists from January 6th, people who hurt cops. He stripped away the rights from women. He has co-opted ICE to spread terror on our streets. And the AG is the first and the last line of defense between all of that and your family and mine. And I'm the only one in this race who has just a strong record of progressive values and putting those values into action with a deep well of experience. Basically, I can make government work. So when I'm your Attorney General, I will protect Rhode Islanders from the wrongdoers and the bad actors, whether they're on the street corner or in the boardroom or in the White House. And we'd love to have your listeners' support. If anyone out there is interested, it's jasonKnightRI.com. And remember to vote September 9th. Thank you.
Representative Jason Knight, Representative Joe Solomon Jr., Kim Ahern, Keith Hoffman. This has been the Rhode Island Attorney General Democratic Primary Forum here on WPRO in Bartholomew Town. I'm Bill Bartholomew. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.